With the FOMC meeting being just a few hours away, we've got a whole lot of data to unpack, and we're also going to be talking about that speculative question, whether or not the Fed is going to stop quantitative tightening at this meeting, what happens if they do, and what happens if they don't. So if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and let's talk about crypto. Right now, investors are not sure what's going to happen for the FOMC meeting. We have Bitcoin kind of going all over the place in the last 24 hours. It has gone up to 116,000 roughly, just to go all the way back down to $112,000 at the time of me recording this. People are wondering, is the Fed going to end quantitative tightening? Are they going to continue it? And what's going to happen to the markets? Now, first and foremost, we have to look at the number one thing in terms of what is the market sentiment right now. People are still relatively in fear. The crypto index here for the fear and greed is at 42, which indicates it's neutral. But over the last few days, we have been in the fear, even touching the extreme fear, despite the markets not doing it too bad. You know, Bitcoin did rally from some of the lows back on October 10th, and we are not doing so bad. But now the question is, what is the Fed going to do at this FOMC meeting? And it's not regarding the interest rates, because if you look at the current statistics, the current predictions from analysts, not from me, we have 100% of a 0.25 basis point cut. And even, that is likely already priced in. So the FOMC meeting that's happening in just a few hours is really going to pivot into one point only, and that to me is quantitative tightening. If Jerome Powell comes out, says we're continuing quantitative tightening, that is likely going to be a bearish sign for the markets, because everyone and their dog is expecting quantitative tightening to end this week. We've had countless bank analysts say the exact same thing. So if it doesn't happen this week, or if it doesn't happen in just a few hours, you're likely going to see a negative impact to that. But that doesn't mean that quantitative tightening is not going to end later on. There is another meeting in December, and they can actually go ahead and end it whenever they really want to. So I want to look at that scenario because, as I said, it's likely going to have a bearish response, but I do think the Fed is eventually going to end quantitative tightening. They're already going down in interest rates. The quantitative tightening aspect of it is the next logical thing to do. So if it's not this meeting, it's likely in December or in between, and that could give us a good buying opportunity for some coins that I'm going to be talking about today. Now, on the flip side of things, if the Fed actually goes ahead and says, you know what, we're done with quantitative tightening, that, in my opinion, is going to be absolutely bullish, because it is going to be one of the first times since 2022 that we see the Fed stop selling treasury assets, so that this liquidity growth month over month or year over year can finally start growing back up, as we saw in 2021's bull market, this green area here, and as we saw in the 2017 bull market. Here, quantitative easing was basically going full through in 2021. In 2017, the Fed's balance sheet was merely stable, so there wasn't a whole lot of QE and there wasn't a whole lot of QT. But again, that is kind of what I'm hoping for this cycle, and to really start seeing liquidity come back to life into risk on assets. We are already seeing, gold hit new all-time highs. We've seen Bitcoin hit new all-time highs. We're seeing the stock market hit all-time highs. And I do think that there is going to be more liquidity that comes into risk on assets and crypto if this happens in just a few hours. So with this mindset, you obviously have to take into account and play a little bit of a devil's advocate, because if we don't get quantitative tightening, it doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. And I want to share with you guys some of the coins that I would be looking at if there isn't quantitative tightening, or even if there is a dip following this news. Let's say it's to sell the news event. You want to be looking at top strong altcoins. And first and foremost, you want to be looking at Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the tell-all of what's happening in the crypto market. And again, going back to the Bitcoin weekly charts, plot the 50-week moving average, and we are, at $113,000 right now, roughly. The 50-week moving average is around $103,000. We're still above this blue line, which means that Bitcoin is still in a bull market. So that is definitely number one. Watch this as Jerome Powell speaks at 2:30. The minutes do come out 30 minutes before the 2:30 p.m. meeting. So that's number one. Number two, Ethereum. If we take a look at what's Ethereum doing on its weekly chart, it's currently sitting around 39.75. It is above the bull market support band, which is currently sitting around 38.50. We've only been in a downtrend for Ethereum ever since it reached the new all-time high in August. We're waiting to see what happens with ETH. But the good thing about this is that if you look at ETH versus Bitcoin, we've actually continued to make higher lows. And this is a good thing because it means that Ethereum is no longer at the lows it once was in April, and is actually slowly but surely gaining a little bit of momentum on Bitcoin. And we can see that it's literally been since August. So it's been about 2.5 months, almost 3 months, that we haven't seen a whole lot happen on Ethereum because Ethereum's been bleeding against Bitcoin. But let me remind you what happened in previous cycles. We've had time and time again the exact same thing. If you go from the bottom of the 2019 cycle, the Fed ended quantitative tightening in September. And then ETH versus Bitcoin slowly but surely kept rising up. There were times where we had dips on ETH Bitcoin, and then it was actually a monumental, run when ETH Bitcoin went through the roof, meaning that ETH was actually gaining on Bitcoin, and that really started the altcoin season and remained, relatively healthy in terms of this relationship for the better part of 1 year, which allowed altcoins to do very well. But since 2022, we've only been in a downtrend for ETH Bitcoin up until April, where we are now slowly but surely starting this new uptrend, which is why I'm keeping a close eye as to what's happening with ETH Bitcoin. Now, with that said, the second most important thing to understand is how money moves in crypto. And you've seen this chart time and time again. I'm going to plaster it in your guys' face yet again. Bitcoin moves, Ethereum moves, large caps, then altcoin season. Well, we want Bitcoin to make a new all-time high. So if Bitcoin falls through the 50-week moving average, it's going to go lower. That means there's likely no all-time high for Bitcoin, which also means Ethereum can't go up if Bitcoin doesn't go up, which also means altcoins can't go up if Bitcoin doesn't go up. So that's why it all goes back to Bitcoin, but we are currently slowly but surely seeing this Ethereum phase continue as Ethereum is gaining over Bitcoin, as we saw with that ETH Bitcoin relationship. It's slow, it takes time, but it is slowly happening. And after that, when that relationship relatively stays stable, that's when you get large caps going crazy. We've already seen a few go crazy, and that is when your altcoin season really happens. So if we relate all of this back to the FOMC meeting, and let's say there is a sell the news event, let's say there isn't the end of quantitative tightening, well, you have to be looking at Ethereum, in my opinion. Ethereum is your number one altcoin. It's the second largest crypto to Bitcoin. So of course, if it falls and you still believe that a bull market is going to happen, which I absolutely strongly still believe in it, as interest rates are going to come down and the Fed is only a matter of time before they end QT, thinking that they haven't ended it already, well, ETH is going to be your number one play for, safety, as well as what could happen next to altcoins. Because like we saw with the ETH Bitcoin relationship, there is still a lot of room to go for ETH Bitcoin for this cycle. You can see that, we're right around 0.21. The last time in 2021, it went to 0.55. So ETH has a whole lot to gain against Bitcoin if we see what we saw in 2021. Now, if you take a look at what's been happening to Ethereum, which is something completely new we didn't have in previous cycles, we have treasuries on treasuries buying Ethereum, and this is exponential. You can see it with this chart. You have a bunch of companies just outright buying Ethereum for their own public treasuries. You have Bitmine, you've for sure heard of the name before, but they've acquired 3.31 million ETH, which is worth about $13.3 billion. If they're buying a crazy amount of ETH, well, they've got to be bullish on it and they've got to think that the price is going to go up. So ETH, definitely number one coin to be looking at. Number two coin to be looking at, in my opinion, is AI agents. I do think that Virtuals' ecosystem is one to watch because every time it drops like crazy, we've seen this happen a few times over the last year, there is always a rally that comes to Virtuals. And if you're buying it at the low, let's say there's another major crash, there is likely going to be another major pump, especially with the entire payments rails that we've seen happen over the last few weeks. If you want to be up to date with crypto and you know the current 402 protocol that is going crazy with AI agents, we've been talking about that in our Discord. It's a premium Discord. First link in the description below. We have, called out many plays that have done very well, some 3, 4, 5Xs, and so on and so forth. And we've been sharing a lot of market research in that group. And that's another way that you can stay up to date with everything that I do in the crypto space. So first link in the description below if you are interested. But going back to Virtuals here, I do agree with what they're saying here. If you're into AI agents, they have over 18,000 AI agents. They are the ecosystem on base for artificial intelligence agents. They've, integrated the entire 402 protocol throughout their ecosystem of agents, and that is only going to continue. And it is on the Base blockchain, which, as you guys all know, I'm bullish on Base and Coinbase through and through. And that is only going to continue with AI agents. So if we take a look at the Virtuals chart back in 2024, when AI agents went absolutely crazy, Virtuals went to $4.70 before crashing all the way down to 47 cents or 40 cents. But then soon after, it went back to $2. And just recently, it's basically done a 2x from 70 cents all the way to $1.50 with the new narrative that is now AI payments or AI agent payments through 402 protocol. And that, in my opinion, is only going to continue to grow. It is a feature that was inevitable for AI agents to accept payments from one another without having that human interaction. So again, Virtuals is, in my opinion, going to be here for the better part of the next few years, if not more, hopefully more. And looking at what AI16Z has said about AI agents and how they see this entire ecosystem playing out, well, they say to unleash the power of AI agents, they need to be able to engage economically. And with 402, this new payment rail by Coinbase, they're the ones that basically built it. We can see that they estimate by 2030, $30 trillion in purchases will be made or influenced by AI agents. So again, the Virtuals ecosystem sitting right now at just around $1 billion of market cap is definitely one to keep on your watch list, especially as it falls, or if it falls, or if there is a retracement following what happens at the FOMC meeting. Now, another one that is probably very evident to most, Solana, is none other than, your second largest chain to Ethereum. It's sitting at just shy of $200 right now. It's going down as I'm making this video, just like any other crypto, because the market's kind of panicking before the FOMC meeting. But Solana is also into AI agents, into RWAs, into all of the narratives we're bullish on. And it being the second largest chain to Ethereum, kind of a no-brainer. We saw it go to $300 in the late parts of 2024, early parts of 2025, and they just recently launched their ETFs. The SEC finally approved the first Solana ETF that went live in the last 24 hours. So more ways to invest in Solana for retail investors. Again, I do think the Solana ecosystem is going to perform well when we get this altcoin season. Now, another coin that has, been through it all and continues to rally despite market conditions. Every time there's a dump on this one, it continues and it finds another way to rally. We're talking about Hyperliquid. This is a Perpetual DEX. Looking at its chart, I still remember when this launched. at $4, and I didn't buy it, but it went all the way to $60 or $58. And right now it's sitting at $47, but just over the last few days, we had, a dip into hype. It went all the way as low as 34, right up back again at $47. And the amount of users and volume and money that this perpetual exchange is seeing is out of this world. If you go take a look at the top projects that are making money, we can see that Hyperliquid is actually the fourth or fifth on 24-hour fees. They're making, about $3.5 million in terms of fees over the last, 24 hours. Over the last week, it's about 24 million. Over the last 30 days, it's about 100 million, putting them in fifth place yet again. So this one here, it's a massive ecosystem. They continue to build. Definitely keep your eyes on Hyperliquid, because I think it's going to continue being here as one of the main perpetual dexes for people to use, especially during an altcoin season. Imagine everybody wanting to use a perpetual dex when everything is starting to fly, because everybody wants to make money and use leverage. Unfortunately, don't use leverage if you don't know what you're doing. Now, last but not least, we have one of my favorites. I do think Aerodrome Finance is going to continue being a force to reckon with in the Base ecosystem. We all know that Base is now looking into having their own token, the Base coin. But Aerodrome is the liquidity hub of Base. They're transacting millions of dollars of volume every single day. It's sitting sub $1. I do think this is, undervalued, but it's not financial advice. This is just my opinion. Likely biased because I own a lot of Aerodrome. But as we can see, every time it pumps and it dumps, it kind of pumps again. In April, it was at 38 cents. We bought some more there. It went all the way back to $1.50. Right now, it's below $1. But again, with what's happening at Coinbase and the Base blockchain right now, it wouldn't really make sense to be bearish on Base. Just recently, we had Animoco Brands invest more money into Aerodrome, actually locking it for 4 years, meaning that they're heavily invested in Aerodrome for the future, because they believe in the flywheel effect of Aerodrome with the locked portion of the Aero token. Not going to get into too many details because we've talked about Aerodrome quite a few times before. Just recently, Coinbase is collaborating with Citigroup to build the future of payments. They're exploring making it easy for Citi clients to use digital assets, unlocking the power of stablecoin payments, and improving off and on ramps. Again, Coinbase, being the behemoth that they are, is only more bullish for Aerodrome. We also know that within the Coinbase exchange, people can use DEX trading, funneling money through Aerodrome. Again, during an altcoin season, likely going to do very well. And in terms of fees that Aerodrome is generating and actually giving back to users who lock the Aero token, well, we can see that over the last 24 hours, Aerodrome has made $500,000 right over here, the number one DEX to do it. In terms of 30-day revenue, we can see that it's second to PancakeSwap, making $17 million. But again, the main difference between these, other DEXs and Aerodrome is that that money is going back to people who buy the Aero token and lock it. A portion of that money is going to those users. So again, it's just a flywheel effect of the Aerodrome ecosystem. And I do believe that it's going to continue doing well, especially that, again, I'm bullish on the Base blockchain. So with that being said, circling back to the FOMC meeting, watch out for QT announcements, watch out for what they do with rates, and look at the tone of Jerome Powell. If there is a sell the news event, watch for these coins. If there isn't the end of quantitative tightening, watch for a dip in the crypto markets. But keep in mind that if Bitcoin continues to hold that 50-week moving average, things are not necessarily going to be over. And don't panic, because when there is fear in the market, it's usually a good time to be greedy. Those are some key words from Warren Buffett. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button. Let me know down below if you think the Fed's going to end QT or not. And I'll catch you guys in my next video. Peace.